Marcus Johnson wasn't like other kids his age. At 16, most teenagers were worried about grades, sports, or hanging out with friends after school. But Marcus? His biggest worry was where he would sleep that night, or if he'd even find something to eat. Life hadn't been kind to him. He had grown up in Chicago, but home wasn't really a place anymore. It was just a memory now, a faded picture of laughter and warmth before everything fell apart. His father passed away when Marcus was only 10, leaving behind a hole that nothing could fill. His mom tried her best at first, working 2 jobs to keep food on the table. But eventually the stress got to her. She started drinking too much and stopped going to work altogether. Their landlord kicked them out when they couldn't pay rent, and Marcus never saw his mom again after she disappeared one winter night. He didn't know where she went, and no one seemed to care enough to help him look. So here he was, years later, living in an old, crumbling building no one else wanted. The roof leaked when it rained, and the floors creaked under every step. Still, it kept him dry most nights, which was more than he could say for some of the other homeless people he knew. During the day, Marcus wandered around the city trying to stay invisible. People didn't want to see someone like him, dirty, tired, and hungry. They looked away or crossed the street to avoid him. It hurt sometimes, but Marcus learned not to let it bother him. Survival meant keeping your head down and focusing on what mattered, finding food and staying safe. That morning, Marcus woke up early like always. He wrapped himself in the thin blanket he'd scavenged months ago and stepped outside. The air was crisp, and the sky was gray, hinting at rain later. Wrapping his arms around himself to ward off the chill, Marcus made his way to the nearby park. It wasn't far from where he stayed, and it was one of the few places he felt somewhat comfortable. There weren't many people there this early, so he could sit quietly without being bothered. He found his usual spot, a wooden bench near the edge of Lake Michigan. The lake stretched out endlessly, its surface calm and glassy today. Marcus liked watching the water. It reminded him of happier times when his dad used to take him fishing on weekends. Those trips felt like a lifetime ago now. Sighing, Marcus sat down and pulled his hood up against the wind. He closed his eyes for a moment, letting the sound of the waves soothe him. When he opened them again, he noticed a little girl playing near the water's edge. She couldn't have been more than 5 or 6 years old. Her bright pink coat stood out against the dull colors of the park, and her curly blonde hair bounced as she laughed and skipped along the shore. A woman, probably her mom, was sitting on another bench a few feet away, scrolling through her phone. She didn't seem to be paying much attention to the girl. Marcus frowned. Something about the scene made him uneasy. The little girl was getting closer and closer to the water, giggling as she chased after a leaf blowing in the breeze. The lake might look calm, but Marcus knew better. Its currents were strong, especially this time of year. One wrong step, and she could slip right in. For a moment, Marcus considered saying something, but then he hesitated. What would he even say? Who was he to tell someone else how to watch their kid? Besides, what if they yelled at him or called the cops? It wouldn't be the first time someone mistook him for trouble just because of how he looked. But as he watched, the unthinkable happened. A sudden gust of wind swept across the park, catching the little girl off guard. She stumbled backward, her tiny legs unable to steady herself. Before anyone could react, she tumbled into the icy water with a splash. Time seemed to slow down. Marcus froze, his heart pounding in his chest. The woman on the bench finally looked up, her face turning pale as she screamed her daughter's name. Other people in the park turned to see what was happening, but they were too far away to do anything quickly. Without thinking, Marcus sprang into action. He bolted toward the lake, his sneakers slipping on the wet grass. The cold hit him immediately as he plunged into the water, soaking him to the bone. It was deeper than he expected, and the current fought against him as he swam toward the flailing girl. Her screams echoed in his ears, urging him to move faster. Reaching her took every ounce of strength Marcus had. When he finally grabbed hold of her, she clung to him tightly, sobbing and shivering. Holding her close, Marcus kicked hard, fighting his way back to the shore. By the time he dragged her onto solid ground, both of them were gasping for air. The girl's mother rushed over, tears streaming down her face as she hugged her daughter tightly. "You saved her," the woman cried, looking at Marcus with wide, grateful eyes. "Thank you. Thank you so much." Marcus didn't say anything. He just nodded and backed away, dripping wet and shaking from the cold. He didn't stick around long enough for anyone else to notice him. Pulling his hood back up, he disappeared into the park, leaving behind a crowd of astonished strangers and a mother who would forever remember the nameless hero who saved her child. Little did Marcus know, this single act of bravery would change his life in ways he couldn't possibly imagine. The rescue by the lake left Marcus feeling drained, not just physically but emotionally too. After pulling Lily out of the water, he'd slipped away before anyone could ask questions. He didn't want attention or praise, he just wanted to go back to his usual routine. But things weren't so simple anymore. As he walked through the park, shivering from the cold, he couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching him. Glancing over his shoulder, he saw a man jogging toward him. The man was older, probably in his late 40s, with short gray hair and glasses. He wore athletic clothes like he'd been running earlier. Marcus tensed up immediately. Was this guy going to yell at him, call the police, or worse, was he some kind of troublemaker? Marcus had learned not to trust strangers easily, especially adults who looked like they had money. They usually only noticed people like him when they wanted something, or when they thought you were causing problems. But instead of yelling or threatening him, the man slowed down as he approached. "Hey there," he said, his voice calm and friendly. "Are you okay?" Marcus blinked, surprised by the question. No one had asked him that in a long time. Not genuinely, anyway. Still, he kept his guard up. "I'm fine," he muttered, avoiding eye contact. His teeth chattered slightly, from the cold betraying his words. The man nodded slowly, studying Marcus carefully. "You're the one who saved that little girl, aren't you?" Marcus stiffened. So this guy had seen what happened. He wondered if the man was angry about it somehow. Or maybe he just wanted details for gossip. Either way, Marcus wasn't interested in talking about it. "She's safe now. That's all that matters," he mumbled, turning to walk away. "Wait," the man called after him. Marcus stopped but didn't turn around. "My name's Daniel Harper," the man continued. "I saw what you did back there. It was brave, really brave." "Brave?" Marcus almost laughed at the word. Brave wasn't how he felt most days. Most days he felt tired, scared, alone. Saving Lily hadn't been about bravery. It had been instinct. Anyone would have done the same, wouldn't they? "I didn't do anything special," Marcus said quietly, still not facing Daniel. "Anyone else would have done the same thing." Daniel shook his head. "Not everyone would have jumped into that water. Trust me, I know. What you did, it doesn't happen every day." Marcus finally turned to look at him, unsure of what to say. There was something different about Daniel, something sincere. Most people either ignored Marcus or treated him like he was invisible. But Daniel seemed genuinely interested in him, as if he actually cared. "I don't need anything," Marcus said cautiously. "I'm just trying to get somewhere warm." Daniel smiled softly. "Fair enough, but listen, I'd like to help. Can we talk for a minute? Please?" Marcus hesitated. Help sounded nice, but it also sounded dangerous. People didn't offer help without expecting something in return. Still, Daniel didn't seem pushy or threatening, and honestly, Marcus was exhausted. Maybe hearing the man out wouldn't hurt. "Okay," Marcus said reluctantly, "but make it quick." They sat down on a nearby bench, and Daniel introduced himself again. He explained that he was a philanthropist, a fancy word Marcus didn't fully understand until Daniel clarified that it meant he worked to help people in need. Daniel told Marcus about how he often supported kids who didn't have families or stable homes, offering them resources and opportunities to build better lives. "I'm not saying I can fix everything," Daniel said gently, "but I'd like to help you if you'll let me. Where are you staying right now?" Marcus hesitated again. He didn't want to admit how bad things were, But deep down, he knew Daniel probably already guessed. "An old building," he said finally. "It's not great, but it keeps me dry." Daniel nodded thoughtfully. "I understand, and I respect your independence, but living like that isn't easy. You deserve more than just surviving, Marcus. Everyone does." The way Daniel said his name caught Marcus off guard. It had been a long time since anyone used his name with such care. For a moment, Marcus allowed himself to imagine what it might be like to accept Daniel's offer, to have a real bed, hot meals, and maybe even a chance to finish school. But fear quickly crept back in. What if Daniel changed his mind later? What if this was all just a trick? "What do you want from me?" Marcus asked bluntly. "Why are you doing this?" Daniel sighed. "Nothing. I don't want anything from you. I just believe everyone deserves a chance to succeed no matter where they start. And based on what I saw today, you've got potential, Marcus. Real potential." Marcus didn't know what to say. No one had ever said anything like that to him before. Teachers had given up on him years ago, and classmates mocked him whenever he tried to participate. Even his own mother had stopped believing in him. Yet here was this stranger telling him he mattered. "I don't have much to offer in return," Marcus admitted quietly. "You don't need to," Daniel replied firmly. "This isn't a trade. It's an opportunity, for both of us. Let me give you a place to stay temporarily, get you enrolled in school. See where life takes you from there." Marcus bit his lip, wrestling with his doubts. Could he really trust Daniel? What if this was all too good to be true? But then he thought about the alternative. Another night sleeping on a hard floor, another day scavenging for food, another year wasted because he was too afraid to take a risk. Maybe it was time to try something new. "Okay," Marcus said, finally, his voice barely above a whisper. "I'll try." Daniel smiled warmly. "That's all I'm asking for. One step at a time." As they stood up and began walking together, Marcus felt a flicker of hope ignite inside him. It was small and fragile, like a candle flame in the wind. But for the first time in years, he dared to believe it might burn brighter, if he let it. Moving into Daniel Harper's home felt surreal for Marcus Johnson. Everything about it was different from what he was used to. The quiet hum of central heating, the smell of fresh meals cooking in the kitchen, the softness of a real bed. At first, Marcus struggled to adjust. He kept waiting for the other shoe to drop, convinced that this new life couldn't possibly last. But day after day, Daniel proved himself trustworthy. He wasn't pushy or demanding. Instead, he gave Marcus space while gently guiding him toward opportunities Marcus never thought he'd have. One of the first things Daniel did was enroll Marcus in high school. It had been years since Marcus had set foot in a classroom, and the idea terrified him. What if he didn't fit in? What if he failed? But Daniel reassured him, saying, "You're smarter than you think, Marcus. Just give yourself time." On his first day, Marcus walked into the bustling hallways feeling completely out of place. His clothes were borrowed from Daniel's nephew and still didn't quite feel like they belonged to him. Students whispered and stared as he passed, their eyes lingering on his worn sneakers and cautious expression. Marcus wanted to disappear, but he forced himself to keep moving forward. He reminded himself why he was here, to build a better future. And that helped steel his nerves. His first class was math, which turned out to be surprisingly familiar. Numbers had always made sense to Marcus, even when nothing else did. When the teacher handed out a worksheet, Marcus completed it quickly, surprising both himself and the teacher. By the end of the week, the teacher pulled him aside and said, "You've got talent, Marcus. Have you ever thought about pursuing something in science or engineering?" Marcus shook his head. "No, I haven't." The idea seemed impossible. People like him didn't become scientists or engineers, they barely survived. But the seed had been planted. Over the next few weeks, Marcus threw himself into his studies, determined to prove, to himself more than anyone else, that he could succeed. He spent hours in Daniel's study, poring over textbooks and practicing problems. Sometimes Daniel would sit with him, offering guidance or encouragement when Marcus grew frustrated. Other times, Marcus worked alone, finding comfort in the quiet rhythm of learning. As the weeks went by, Marcus began making friends too. Two classmates, Emily Carter and Alex Bennett, noticed how hard he worked and started sitting with him during lunch. Emily was talkative and kind, always asking questions about his interests and hobbies. Alex, quieter but equally genuine, shared Marcus's love of puzzles and problem-solving. Together, the three of them formed a bond, laughing and joking, like any normal group of teenagers. For the first time in years, Marcus felt like he belonged somewhere. Even so, challenges remained. Some students weren't as welcoming as Emily and Alex. A few boys in his grade mocked him for being too smart or for coming from the wrong side of town. One afternoon, as Marcus walked to his locker, one of them sneered, "What are you doing here anyway? This school's not for charity cases." The words stung, but Marcus refused to let them show. Instead, he looked the boy straight in the eye and said calmly, "Maybe not, but I'm here now and I'm staying." Then he turned and walked away, leaving the bully speechless. Later that evening, Marcus told Daniel about the incident. To his surprise, Daniel didn't offer pity or anger. Instead, he said, "You handled that perfectly, Marcus. People will always try to bring you down because they're scared of your potential. Don't let them win." Those words stayed with Marcus long after the conversation ended. They reminded him of all he'd overcome already, and all he still hoped to achieve. Around the same time, Rachel Dawson, Lily's mother, reached out to thank Marcus again. She invited him to visit her nonprofit organization, which helped children and teens living in poverty. When Marcus arrived, Rachel greeted him warmly and introduced him to the staff. She explained that many of the kids they served faced challenges similar to the ones Marcus had endured. "I want you to see this place," Rachel said, "not just because you saved my daughter's life, but because you inspire me. You remind me of what resilience looks like." Touched by her words, Marcus agreed to volunteer part-time at the organization. Helping others gave him a sense of purpose he hadn't felt before. Whether he was tutoring younger kids or organizing food drives, Marcus found joy in knowing he was making a difference. For once, he wasn't just surviving. He was thriving. By the end of his first semester, Marcus's grades reflected his hard work. Teachers praised his dedication, and even some of the bullies grudgingly admitted he was smart. Emily and Alex celebrated his success with him, taking him out for pizza to mark the occasion. As they laughed and joked around the table, Marcus realized something important. He wasn't alone anymore. He had people who believed in him, people who saw his worth, even when he struggled to see it himself. Still, doubts lingered in the back of his mind. Could he really keep going like this? Could someone like him truly achieve big dreams? Those questions haunted him late at night, when the house was quiet and his thoughts turned inward. But every morning, he woke up and chose to believe in the possibility of a brighter future, and with each passing day that belief grew stronger. As spring approached, Marcus Johnson began to feel more settled in his new life. School had become less intimidating, and his confidence grew with each passing week. He still faced challenges. Some students continued to mock him, and there were days when old fears crept back in, but he no longer let those things define him. With Daniel's support, Marcus started dreaming bigger than he ever thought possible. One day, Daniel brought up something that would change everything: college. "Have you thought about applying to universities?" Daniel asked one evening. As they sat together in the kitchen, Marcus froze, his fork halfway to his mouth. "College? For me? Why not you?" Daniel replied calmly. "You're smart, hard-working, and determined. Those are exactly the qualities colleges look for." Marcus shook his head. "I don't know. I mean, people like me don't usually go to college. It costs too much, and besides, I'm not sure I'd fit in." Daniel sighed and leaned forward, his expression serious but kind. "Marcus, listen to me. You've already proven you can overcome obstacles most people wouldn't even attempt. College might seem impossible now, but so did finishing high school when you first started. Look how far you've come since then." Marcus glanced down at his plate, unsure of what to say. The idea of going to college excited him. It meant opening doors he never knew existed, but it also terrified him. What if he failed? What if he disappointed Daniel or embarrassed himself? Seeing the hesitation in Marcus's eyes, Daniel softened his tone. You don't have to decide right away, but I want you to consider it. There are scholarships out there, designed to help students like you, and I'll be here every step of the way to guide you. Over the next few weeks, Daniel introduced Marcus to the world of college applications. They spent hours researching schools online, narrowing down options based on Marcus's interests in math and science. Daniel encouraged Marcus to aim high, suggesting prestigious institutions like MIT and Stanford. At first, Marcus laughed nervously. Those places are for geniuses, he said. I'm just me. But Daniel wouldn't let him dismiss the idea so easily. Genius isn't born, Marcus. It's made through hard work and dedication. You've got both in spades. Slowly, Marcus began to believe it might be possible. He poured his heart into writing his application essays, describing his journey from homelessness to hope. He wrote about the struggles he'd faced, the loss of his father, the abandonment by his mother, the nights spent hungry and cold, and how those experiences shaped him into the person he was today. He talked about saving Lily Dawson and how that moment ignited a spark within him to create a better future, not just for himself, but for others. While working on his applications, Marcus continued volunteering at Rachel Dawson's nonprofit organization. Being around the kids reminded him of where he came from and why he wanted to succeed. Many of them looked up to him as a role model, and their admiration motivated him to keep pushing forward. Rachel noticed the impact Marcus was having and often praised him for his patience and compassion. You're making such a difference here, she told him one afternoon after a tutoring session. These kids need someone like you, someone who understands what they're going through but also shows them that there's a way out. Her words touched Marcus deeply. For so long he'd felt invisible, like his existence didn't matter. Now people were counting on him, not just Daniel or Rachel, but the kids he worked with and even his friends at school. That realization gave him strength on the tougher days when self-doubt threatened to pull him under. Despite his progress, Marcus still struggled with moments of insecurity. Sometimes, late at night, he lay awake wondering if he truly deserved this second chance. Memories of his past haunted him. The loneliness, the hunger, the feeling of being unwanted. On those nights, Daniel would knock on his door and sit with him, offering quiet reassurance. You've earned this, Marcus, Daniel would say. Everything you've achieved is because of your own effort and courage. Don't let anyone, including yourself, convince you otherwise. With Daniel's encouragement, Marcus pushed through his doubts and submitted his college applications before the deadlines. As he hit the final send button, a wave of relief washed over him. No matter what happened next, he had taken a leap of faith, a step toward a future he once thought was beyond reach. In the weeks that followed, Marcus threw himself into his volunteer work and studies, trying to distract himself from the waiting game of college admissions. Emily and Alex helped by keeping him busy with weekend outings and study sessions. They celebrated small victories together, like acing a test or completing a challenging project. Their friendship became a lifeline, reminding Marcus that he wasn't alone in this journey. One Saturday afternoon, while organizing supplies at the nonprofit center, Marcus received a call from Daniel. His voice sounded unusually excited. Come home right away, Daniel said. There's something we need to talk about. Confused but curious, Marcus hurried back to Daniel's house. When he walked through the door, Daniel greeted him with a wide grin and held up an envelope. This came for you today, he said, handing it to Marcus. Marcus stared at the envelope, his heart pounding. It bore the logo of MIT. Slowly, he opened it and began reading. His eyes widened as he processed the words, "Congratulations, Marcus Johnson. We are pleased to offer you a full scholarship to attend Massachusetts Institute of Technology." Tears welled up in Marcus's eyes as the reality sank in. He had done it. Against all odds, he had been accepted into one of the top universities in the world. Overwhelmed with emotion, he looked up at Daniel, who was beaming with pride. I knew you could do it, Daniel said softly. For a moment, Marcus couldn't speak. All the hardships, the sacrifices, the sleepless nights, they had led him here, and though the road ahead would undoubtedly be challenging, Marcus felt ready to face whatever came next. That evening, as he stood outside gazing at the stars, Marcus allowed himself to dream. Not just for himself, but for all the kids back at the nonprofit center, the ones who needed proof that their circumstances didn't have to define them. If a homeless boy from Chicago could make it this far, then maybe, just maybe, they could too. The days following Marcus Johnson's acceptance to MIT were a whirlwind of emotions. On one hand, he felt an overwhelming sense of accomplishment, a pride so deep it made his chest ache. He had done what once seemed impossible, earned a full scholarship to one of the best universities in the world. But on the other hand, doubt lingered in the corners of his mind. Could he really handle it? Would he fit in among students who likely came from privileged backgrounds, with parents cheering them on and resources at their fingertips? Daniel noticed Marcus's hesitation during dinner one evening. "You seem quiet," Daniel said gently. "Is something bothering you?" Marcus hesitated before answering. I keep thinking about how different I am from everyone else going there. They probably grew up with everything handed to them. Nice houses, fancy schools, parents helping them every step of the way. Me? I've been living in an abandoned building until recently." Daniel nodded thoughtfully. "It's true that your journey has been harder than most, but that's also what makes you special, Marcus. You've learned resilience, creativity, and grit, qualities many people don't develop until much later. In life, if ever. Those things will serve you well at MIT. Marcus wanted to believe Daniel, but the fear of failure gnawed at him. What if he couldn't keep up academically? What if he embarrassed himself? Or worse, let Daniel down? Seeing Marcus's struggle, Emily and Alex decided to step in. One afternoon after school, they surprised him with a small celebration at a local cafe. Balloons and streamers decorated the table, and a homemade cake read, "Congrats, future rocket scientist." "We figured you needed a reminder of how amazing you are," Emily said with a grin. Alex nodded. "Yeah, dude, you're gonna crush it at MIT. Don't let anyone, including yourself, tell you otherwise." Their support meant more to Marcus than they could know. For the first time in weeks, he allowed himself to feel excited about the future. Maybe he didn't have to carry this weight alone. Maybe he could lean on the people who believed in him. In preparation for college, Marcus spent his remaining months in Chicago soaking up as much knowledge as he could. He attended workshops at the nonprofit center, learning skills like public speaking and leadership. Rachel Dawson encouraged him to share his story with the kids he tutored, hoping it would inspire them to dream bigger. One Saturday morning, Marcus stood in front of a group of wide-eyed children, holding up his acceptance letter. "This might sound crazy," he began, "but 2 years ago I was living in an abandoned building. I didn't think I'd ever graduate high school, let alone get into a place like MIT. But here I am today, proof that anything is possible if you work hard enough and refuse to give up." The room erupted in applause, and several kids ran up to hug him afterward. Their admiration reminded Marcus why he had fought so hard to change his life, not just for himself, but for others like him. Despite these moments of triumph, Marcus still faced challenges. Some classmates continued to mock him, calling him charity case or accusing him of getting into MIT solely because of pity. One day, after overhearing such comments in the hallway, Marcus felt anger boiling inside him. Instead of confronting them directly, he channeled that frustration into his studies, determined to prove them wrong. At home, Daniel helped Marcus prepare for the transition to college life. They discussed practical matters like budgeting, time management, and navigating campus resources. Daniel also emphasized the importance of self-care, reminding Marcus that it was okay to ask for help when needed. "You're not alone anymore," Daniel said firmly. "There are professors, advisors, and counselors at MIT whose job is to support students like you. Don't hesitate to reach out if you need guidance." As summer approached, Marcus began packing for Boston. The process was bittersweet. While he was thrilled about starting this new chapter, He hated the idea of leaving behind the people who had supported him. Emily and Alex threw him a farewell party, complete with heartfelt speeches and plenty of laughter. Even Rachel and Lily showed up, bringing a scrapbook filled with photos and notes from the kids at the nonprofit center. "This is our way of saying thank you," Rachel said, hugging Marcus tightly. "You've touched so many lives, including mine. Never forget that." On the day Marcus left for MIT, Daniel drove him to the airport. As they waited at the gate, Daniel handed Marcus a small wrapped gift. Inside was a leather-bound journal with the words, "Believe in yourself," engraved on the cover. "For all the big ideas and dreams you're about to chase," Daniel explained, "write them down, reflect on them, and remember how far you've come." Tears welled up in Marcus's eyes as he hugged Daniel tightly. "Thank you," he whispered, "for everything." As Marcus boarded the plane, he clutched the journal close, feeling both nervous and hopeful. He knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but for the first time in his life, he truly believed he could face whatever came next. Looking out the window, as the plane ascended, Marcus thought about all the moments that had led him here. The freezing nights on park benches, the terror of jumping into icy water to save Lily, the kindness of strangers like Daniel and Rachel, and the unwavering support of friends like Emily and Alex. Each experience had shaped him into the person he was today, a fighter, a dreamer, and someone capable of changing the world. When the plane landed in Boston, Marcus took a deep breath and stepped onto the tarmac. Ahead of him lay uncertainty, challenge, and opportunity. But for the first time in his life, Marcus felt ready to embrace it all. Marcus Johnson's first year at MIT was nothing short of challenging. The coursework was intense, and the pressure to succeed weighed heavily on him. For the first few months, he often doubted whether he belonged among his brilliant classmates. Many of them had grown up attending elite schools and seemed effortlessly confident. Marcus, however, carried the weight of his past, the memories of hunger, cold nights, and the constant fight for survival. But instead of letting those memories hold him back, he used them as fuel to push forward. He quickly learned that asking for help wasn't a sign of weakness. It was a strength. Professors noticed his determination and offered guidance whenever he struggled. Classmates who initially seemed distant warmed up to him once they saw how hard he worked. Slowly but surely, Marcus began to feel like he belonged. One of the highlights of his freshman year was joining a robotics club. It combined his love for math and problem-solving with hands-on creativity. Working alongside teammates, Marcus helped design a prototype for a low-cost water filtration system aimed at helping communities without access to clean drinking water. The project reminded him of his own struggles and inspired him to use his skills to make a difference in the world. During winter break, Marcus returned to Chicago to visit Daniel, Rachel, and the kids at the nonprofit center. They threw a welcome home party for him, eager to hear about his adventures at MIT. Marcus shared stories of late-night study sessions, exciting projects, and even a few funny mishaps. The kids listened wide-eyed, hanging on to every word. "You're like a superhero," one little boy said earnestly. Marcus laughed softly. "No, I'm just someone who didn't give up. If I can do it, so can you." The visit reinforced Marcus's commitment to giving back. He spent hours tutoring the kids, encouraging them to dream big and believe in themselves. Rachel watched proudly, knowing that Marcus's journey had come full circle. As the years passed, Marcus continued to excel. By his senior year, he had become a leader both in and out of the classroom. His robotics team won awards for their innovative designs, and he was invited to speak at conferences about using technology to address global challenges. Yet despite his growing success, Marcus remained humble. He never forgot where he came from or the people who had helped him along the way. On the day of his graduation, Marcus stood backstage, clutching his diploma case tightly. Emotions swirled inside him, pride, gratitude, and disbelief that he had actually made it this far. As he stepped onto the stage, the crowd erupted into applause. Scanning the audience, he spotted Daniel, Rachel, Emily, and Alex sitting together, beaming with pride. Lily, now 8 years old, held up a handmade sign that read, "We love you, Marcus." Tears welled up in Marcus's eyes as he accepted his diploma. This moment wasn't just for him. It was for everyone who had believed in him when he couldn't believe in himself. It was for Daniel, who had given him a second chance. For Rachel, who had shown him the power of kindness. For Emily and Alex, who had become family. And for Lily, whose life he had saved, and who had unknowingly saved his in return. After the ceremony, Marcus reunited with his loved ones outside. Hugs and congratulations flowed freely, and laughter filled the air. Daniel patted him on the back, his eyes glistening with tears. "I'm so proud of you, Marcus. Your father would be too." Those words hit Marcus deeply. He thought about his dad often, especially during tough times. Knowing that his father's memory lived on through his achievements brought him comfort. That evening, as the sun set over Boston, Marcus sat alone for a moment, reflecting on how far he'd come. From a homeless teenager struggling to survive, to a graduate of one of the world's top universities. His journey had been anything but ordinary. Along the way, he had discovered something profound. True success wasn't measured by accolades or titles. It was about resilience, gratitude, and the impact you made on others. Looking ahead, Marcus knew his work wasn't done. He planned to pursue a career in engineering, focusing on creating sustainable solutions for underserved communities. He dreamed of starting a foundation to support kids like him, young people facing impossible odds, but full of untapped potential. As he closed his journal and tucked it under his arm, Marcus smiled. Life hadn't been easy, but every challenge had led him here, to a place where hope outweighed fear and possibilities stretched as far as the horizon. Whatever lay ahead, Marcus knew he was ready, and for the first time in his life, he felt truly free.